gente, bom dia a todos. Eu vou falar rapidamente, porque depois a doutora Cláudia vai fazer uma exposição sobre a parte toda de ensino, mas eu gostaria de dar as boas-vindas a todos vocês, né, nesse ano letivo que se inicia nesse momento, e dizer que é uma honra ter todos vocês, nossa palestrante, Good Morning, Khady, e aqui nessa aula inaugural, principalmente neste momento de pandemia em que nós tivemos várias restrições, e estar aqui hoje fazendo a aula inaugural, começando mais um ano letivo, é muito importante para todos nós. Então, assim, os alunos, mais do que bem-vindos, nossos estudantes de iniciação científica já estão aqui também a postos, trabalhando, e os nossos pesquisadores, né, no geral, todos estão nas suas funções. O IGM, como Instituto da Fiocruz, na Bahia, é um instituto que desenvolve pesquisas, academia, na academia, nós temos 48 pesquisadores em atividade de pesquisa, com suas orientações, com seus alunos, e é uma honra estar nesse momento na diretoria do Instituto, um momento em que nós estamos fazendo várias reestruturações, seja na estrutura, na infraestrutura, seja nos laboratórios, e também com a produção acadêmica bastante expressiva, né, com várias publicações de expressão mundialmente. Então, dar as boas-vindas, agradecer a Patrícia pelo convite da Khady. Khady, you are very welcome to Salvador. Unfortunately, you are not here with us, but I'm very happy to hear you in this section. Okay, because we have several projects with Africa people, and I would like to talk with you later. Very welcome. Obrigada, Patrícia.
Boa. Claudinha, posso terminar?
Patrícia, por favor, prossiga apresentando o Khady para a gente.
Eu vou começar só dando boas-vindas aos alunos e pedir desculpas que a gente vai fazer a apresentação de Khady em inglês, né? Uma questão de cordialidade. Então, mas vocês todos são muito bem-vindos. Khady, sorry, now I am going to move to English. We are very glad to have you here. That's a very pleasure to you have accepted our invitation some months ago, but we are happy to be able to organize this meeting. Khady, I will introduce her. She's an entrepreneur, molecular biologist, and an assistant professor at the Virtual University of Senegal in Dakar. She founded the non-profit organization Science Education Exchange for Sustainable Development and the Ebola Innovation Lab in Dakar. She completed her PhD at 2017 in the Oregon State University in Corvallis, USA, in genetics, and decided after her PhD to found this interesting non-profit organization that probably she will talk more about to promote science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics in her home country, which is Senegal. She runs the newly created Ebola Innovation Lab in the Virtual University of Senegal in Dakar, and she showed us a very interesting, intriguing title, which is "Build What You Love." I think that is the title that will invite all the students to follow your experience. Thank you very much, Khady, to be here.
Thank you.
I will close the image and the phone to be alone in the room.
My name is Khady Sall. So I am a molecular biologist and an entrepreneur in Senegal, and I worked I work in education, in research, and in different fields. Because, you know, for me, what was important for me, like growing up, is I wanted to build a career that reflects like who I am and sorry, what I want to do. So before we kind of deep dive into CSD, like I'm just going to talk about myself, about my journey, and how I ended up, like, you know, being here and working in the projects which I'm working on, which are actually very fulfilling projects. So I was born in Senegal. I grew up here. So Senegal, it's West Africa, it's the westernmost part of Africa. So I grew up here in Dakar, the capital, and I did all my education here. Like all my education means like all the way till the end of high school. And the education here, I'm not sure if some of you have ever been to Africa, or like it has a lot of, I'm not going to too much focus on the issues, but it has a lot of problems. And then mainly some of the problems are like the education is not really practical. You don't do a lot of hands-on experiment, but also as well, it's not really, you know, based on what is doing in modern times. Because like a history we have in many places in Africa here is like we were colonized. And then based on this colonization, we inherited some curriculum that we're still using, even, you know, colonization is not really here anymore. And so, which means like we end up using these outdated curricula that are not very much adapted to the context. And it also like what you will expect people to learn in the 21st century. So this is, you know, my education and how it was really not compared to what was doing globally, to what was happening globally, it was not very much adapted. But in my case though, I was like, for a lot of people, they got into science because they either had a mentor, or they had a mentor, or they had some people who like helped them go through that. But for me, in my case, it was not that. It was not like that. So when I was a kid, I used to, you know, when I was going to school, I used to pick up, like, for example, things I would find on the streets, and I used to build my own toys and, you know, do those kind of stuff. So I was a pretty agile kid. So which, like, in retrospect, this means I could have had a career in engineering or some other places. But, you know, like school did not really guide me towards that way. And eventually, you know, I started liking biology a lot. Why biology? Because obviously, like, since we don't do experiment, we don't have this much practical education. There is something I had, which is when we talk about biology, for example, we talk about diseases, we talk about malaria and those kind of stuff. You could actually experiment it, because as a person, you have your body, and biology is working inside of you. So it's like when people, the teachers were talking about diseases or something, I've had malaria before. So I know what it means, I know the symptom. So that's why eventually I felt like this was more practical for me. So I just loved that field. And then by the time I finished high school, I wanted to do like education related to biology. But in this case, something that really, you know, was kind of similar to some extent was medical school here. But, you know, like, even I had good grades. At some point, when it came to medical school here, I did not get in. I don't know necessarily why, but I could not get into the medical school here. So eventually, that year was very difficult for me, because, you know, in this case here, you don't even have a formal application. It's just like when you're done, eventually the government will, like, you know, put you in some of fields or like some areas or not. Sometimes that process doesn't go really well. So eventually, all of a sudden, I really did not know like what I was, you know, because besides something related to medical school, there was no biology education in Senegal. Like, I looked everywhere, there was nothing here. So I really wanted to do that. So I had to go and find something to do abroad. And in that case, since in Senegal, we are French speakers, so I was looking for biological kind of education in French. So that's how I got into a university there. And then I, left Senegal and went abroad to kind of start bachelor degree in Europe. So in France precisely. And there really, it was, it's kind of difficult, like when you grow up in a certain place and then all of a sudden you're abroad by yourself studying, like your family is not there anymore, and then you don't necessarily, like financially as well, you're not doing very, very great, so you have to figure out ways that you actually could survive. And something that really helped me going through like life in France studying was like, I was lucky enough to find this job. It was just by accident. One day at the university, I was passing by this poster. I was like, oh, well, this seems cool, because it was advertising that, oh, well, like this is kind of a job you could do, like a flexible job you could do. And for this flexible job, the goal was to teach science to kids. So I was like, oh, I like science and this seems fun. Maybe I'll apply. But eventually I even like forgot about it. I stopped passing by that poster because I was not having classes in that area. And one day, just by chance, like I passed by again, and it was the last day. It was like that day, it was the deadline for like application. And so I just applied. I went to this meeting, and then I was hired to start doing like education, science education for kids. So back in France, the job I was doing really to survive was I was like teaching science to kids, whether it was in like in museum settings or in like some sort of like centers. So that's how I was kind of really surviving back in France. And then so that's literally how I got this experience into teaching science and getting really much into education, like starting college. And then later, I had this opportunity to go to US because also, like I would say, a lot of things that happened in my career as well. I will not necessarily say it's sometimes, maybe it's luck, but also luck, you have to provoke it as well. You just, like, you have to do something in order to get there, to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be open, you have to open some door to be in that place. So which means you need to work towards that luck. But at some point, things that happen, sometimes you think maybe it's luck, maybe it's not. You don't necessarily know. But eventually, when I was doing like my bachelor in France, like biology, and my master's as well, it was more, I was doing biology for bachelor and then biochemistry for master, but it was more geared towards medical type of science. For example, I was working in like cancer, those kind of diseases. So it was more related to the medical aspect. And if you see later my PhD, I was more working on like plant biology. So, and just because like when I was taking one class, like one day, actually that class, I used to not be there a lot because I had work at the same time. So I used to skip a lot that class, but that day, for some reason, I did not have work. So I was like, okay, since I don't have work, I can go there. And then when I went there, the professor was talking about having an internship abroad. And I hesitated a lot before I like went to him and talked to him, because I was like, oh, well, I'm already a struggling student. So I'm not really making ends meet. And then like, I will not potentially have the financial capacity to kind of go to another country, even if it's to do an internship. But then at some point I was like, why not? Even if like you just try, you don't have nothing to do, so just try. Then I went, and then I talked to the professor, and he was like, okay, well, I have this person that I know in Canada. maybe he will accept you to do an internship. And then he gave me the contact information. And then I apply. I sent a lot of emails to that person, which did not reply. At some point, I took my phone, I started calling, and then I eventually reached someone, and they told me like, oh well, we cannot offer you an internship here. So I told them, if you cannot offer me an internship here, do you know some other labs where I could go to, and then like be able to do an internship? And that's how they gave me the contact for the lab in the US where I was at. So then that's how I came to the US first as a trainee. So I was doing an internship, and then it was right after my bachelor. And then when I went there as a trainee, I was like asking questions. I was really very much into the the lab work. And then eventually, by the time the internship was just like 2 months. So by the time I was at the end of the second month, they offered me like a PhD position. And also at that time, in the US, there's this thing where if you did very well in your bachelor, you could just skip masters and go directly to PhD. So I had that option. By the time I was done with bachelor, I was offered to do a PhD in the US. But then I was hesitating because it also meant like going to a different country, struggling again, doing some other thing, but also changing my field of study a little bit because I was more medical. In this case, I would have to do something more related to plant biology, which, I hesitated a lot because in science, something I did not like, and it really explained why I did the choices I did later. It's like science, it tends to want to give you a tunnel vision. For example, if you're working in this protein, you may work on this protein your whole life. If you're working on this gene, this regulatory pathway, you may work on this regulatory pathway your whole life. It doesn't give you sometimes the possibility to be flexible and to explore like different areas. So, and then in that case, I was scared because I'm like, well, this plant stuff I want to do, because eventually if I want to go back to Africa as well, I need to be kind of adaptable. In this case, like if I'm in the research institute where we're working on climate change, I'll be comfortable. If I go back and there's this thing in the medical field, I'll be comfortable. So this technically will be a good thing for my career, but I was afraid that at some point it will narrow me down only to plant research. So it was not an easy decision for me to make. So, but eventually, like the professor back in the US gave me time to think about it. And then it took me 2 months and I accepted the position, but I told him like, I want to finish my master's first before I do a PhD in the US, because if I have my master, at least if PhD doesn't go really well, then I will still have a master I could use. So, and then he accepted to wait like almost 2 years for me to finish my master. And then I went to the US. And that's where I started to like working more on very much on genomics. So I work on DNA sequencing, like RNA sequencing. And then my work really there was to figure out like genes that are important for drought tolerance. And then that are important for drought tolerance or also seed dormancy. And then the goal was finding out these new genes. You could actually use them for application purposes. For example, if you figure out a new gene or even like a DNA fragment that's capable of conferring this, this resistance against drought or some other stresses, you could actually pick up that gene and engineer some plants that are resistant to drought. And that will be very much important to where I'm from, Senegal, because we're not really far from the Sahara Desert, and the desert is expanding due to climate change. So, and I did all of that as a PhD student. I had publications, and then while I was doing that, I always thought about coming back in Senegal, because eventually it was like this entrepreneurship. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to start things, to do things, to sell things. So I had this entrepreneurship, like I would say, vibe. But by the time I was in US doing PhD, at some point I really wanted to start something in Senegal, but I did not know what, because what I was studying was really advanced in terms of like, if you want to do, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So,
and the presentation is already there, huh? If you want to.
okay, so I will use it like right away. So,
okay.
yeah, I will ask you to skip the slide. So I will come back to CSE just a bit. So, and by the time I was, you know, I always wanted to start something in Senegal, but I did not necessarily know what, because what I was studying was so advanced, and the research institute, like even the programs, I told you when I wanted to do biology, there was not a biology program in Senegal. So it's like, and it requires building a lab, everything requires a lot of investment. And then when you're a student, I mean, there's no way you could, that's so much money. So I cannot come and start this big lab from scratch. And it was not possible at first. So it's like, and then also, even if you start a lab, who's going to work in that lab? Because also you need really good human resources to work in that lab. And a problem we have in Senegal as well is a lot of people like are geared towards like literature, like those kind of fields. We don't have a lot of scientists out of like, if you see 10 students who are able to reach the university level, which is a minority, 1.7 out of those 10 students will be in STEM field. So then there was this whole big issue that needed to be solved. Like, first of all, you know, human resources, then you also need to convince people that it should be enough for people to build this facility, because you could come in there and do research. So then eventually also, like the Ebola outbreak happened. And then when Ebola happened, like it scared me a lot, because at that time I was doing PhD, but also it was like, I almost dropped out, because I was like, if like Ebola comes to Senegal, then eventually your family is there. And that disease is very lethal, like it kills like crazy. It's different from COVID. The only chance you have, it's like it kills at the later stage, but like it's very dangerous as well. So at some point I was like, if it goes that bad, I could come back home. I could I could help run some tests or do something, or like, but then thank God it became like something that people could handle. But I was like, for me, that was a warning call that I had to do something. And then I started coming to Senegal and asking questions. It's like, oh, I did biology education. I want to train people, because eventually, if you train people in biology or something, when it comes to, if a pandemic or something comes, like people will be able to make decisions that are based on science, but not decisions that are based on like just, you know, your feelings or whatever. Then we see that thing happen a lot during COVID-19. But when I come to Senegal and asking questions in different schools and different people, they told me, well, the problem is not only biology, it's everything. Like when it comes to science, it's all the fields. It's not only biology. So if you want to do something, you will need to expand. And then eventually I realized that, well, you know, the job I was doing in France, like as a student, actually is way more needed here. Maybe at first I could start doing something similar, which is educating from a young age, and I could actually use my experience from there. And this is how like CSD happened, which is an organization that's promoting STEAM education starting from a young age. So, and then, sorry, in this case for the presentation, like when you see, like the first slide is Jang Science Ngir Ëllëg. That's what you see below CSD. And that means learn science for tomorrow in the native language. Because something you will understand a lot with CSD is the fact that the goal is to promote science, yes, but to promote science that is rooted within our local values. Like, for example, the promotion of the local language, the promotion of the local languages, and the promotion of like, if you see like multiple African cultures, like science is very much integrated within the culture. For example, here, there are like some clothes we wear like for, like when we have, like when a child is born or during marriage or even during funerals, and that type of cloth, like when you look at it, it's like you have algorithms that are like put on that cloth as a motif. So, and at some point, people don't, like this science just disappear because people just think of it as, you know, a clothes you wear. But if you look at it, it's more like it's using a form of geometry that's called fractal geometry. So which means if you start looking for like examples, you would see a lot of different examples of like very much cutting edge science, but are very much integrated within the culture, whether it's like how people dance, how people braid their hair, how people like, you know, the type of cloth they make, even some rituals. So, and then we can go to the next slide. So, yeah, this one I was talking about, the next one. Next, please. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. And then for this slide, you know, when I came back to Senegal having this idea, the thing is, I mean, an idea, it's like this proverb we say in Africa: if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you're going to go far, you go with people. And if you want to, something is like, when I started, I did not necessarily have like financial means or like money or something, but what was very much important for me is to have people. And then when I came in here, when I spoke about the idea, like people came in, like family members, cousins, like people, friends, and people really came in to help build this idea. So, and then we were especially really younger, we lacked a lot of experience. We were like, okay, let's build an organization. We don't necessarily know what it means to build an organization, but we were just like, oh, let's do it, you know? So, and then we had this team and we were working together. So can we go to the next slide, please, as well? And then why I decided to focus first on like teaching science to young kids or to young people, it's like when you look at Africa, like the majority of the people are young. That's the difference you will see when you travel here based on when you travel in Europe or US or some other countries. You will mainly see a lot of kids. Like the majority of the population is below 19. So, and then here is like mentioned above like 200 million are aged between 15 and 24. In Senegal, below 55% are under 19. So if you like, even in your 30s, like you starting to be like older than most of the people here. And then, so we have the youngest population in the world. And this youngest population means like, for me, if we really focus on training them, we can actually do a change that can be really fast. For example, if you focus on providing all the needed resources to younger people, in 10 to 15 years, they will grow up. So if you provide good education for them, like this 10 to 15 years, this change could happen here. So that's why we decided to focus first on this very much young age. And then how do we do it? Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is like what I was mentioning earlier. Most of the people don't study STEM, they don't do science education. If you go at the university, 1.7 students out of 10 do science, and this is the distribution. So which means like, imagine something like, for example, COVID-19. So you don't have enough doctors, you don't have enough nurses, you don't have enough engineers, and that's very dangerous, actually. That's really dangerous to have a population where you don't have this kind of human resources that are very important, especially when a problem happens, So can we go to the next slide, please, as well? So yeah, and our goal was like, this is in French, it's like promouvoir l'apprentissage, which means we promoting STEAM education. STEAM education meaning science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. We want to encourage scientific literacy and critical thinking starting from a young age. And how do we do that? This is our mission. And how do we do that? Can we go to the next slide? So next. Yeah. This is in 2020. This is the impact we had. I will come back to this slide later because this was just in 2020, but over the years we have impacted like really a lot of people like doing the workshop. But in this case, the goal was really to teach science to younger kids and then try to make sure like all these young people, we gear them towards STEAM education. And we do that by showing them science can be fun and science can be like hands-on. It can be very practical. So can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so first, what do we do? Like first, how we do this education here with CSD. The first important aspect of CSD is we create curriculums or curricula. Why? Because I mentioned it first, a lot of curricula I study here, like at elementary school all the way to high school, they're outdated. They're based on like examples that no longer exist. And they use usually very theoretical, so which means no practice at all. And also something that's really even more alarming is the fact that now we're living in the digital area. Here right now, I'm doing this Zoom call with you who are like very far away from Senegal in Brazil. So which means like the new tools also need to be integrated within education. Like the digital tool needs to be integrated within education. Because something that happened with Africa is like, you know, before the digital revolution that's happening right now, we had the industrial revolution. And the industrial revolution, it happens in the 1800s. And when it happened, we were not really like the African, like countries or continents, we were not really at the middle of it. You know, we were not at the middle of it. So which means eventually it happened somewhere else. And then it happened somewhere else. And then it happened somewhere else. And then those countries, they got developed, they produced, they got industrialized, they produced a lot of stuff. And since now we're very much far behind, we don't have industrialized country. We still have like our economy is not solid. And then and now there is this new chance, we have another revolution, which is the digital revolution. So that's why this advocacy and the fact of creating these curricula are very important, because the goal is, the first one we were left, but this one we don't want to be left behind. We want to be part of it. So we create curricula. Can we go to the next slide, please? Like using new technology, using new technology. And usually what's more important is like these curricula are very much adapted to the context. For example, we do curricula that are a lot done with the local languages. So because you will see here, sometimes kids, they go to school here thinking they're actually bad, because like here we have our native language. When we grow up, that's what we speak. So it's Wolof mainly in Senegal. And then all of a sudden, you're 5 years old, they put you in school and you start speaking another language, it's French. So which means a lot of kids, they go through school thinking they're actually bad, but they're not bad. They just don't understand the language in which they're being taught. So, and then sometimes if you can use a math problem, you could give a math problem to a kid, like you frame the same math problem in French, the kid won't have the answer. You take the same problem, you frame it in the local language, and the kid will be able to give you the right answer. So which means a lot of people think actually they're bad at science, but they're not actually bad. It's just they don't understand the language in which that's being used to teach them. So then can we go to the next slide, please? So this is what we're really trying to change with designing new curricula. So, and the new curricula, we're designing curricula in water, in 3D printing, in like some other stuff, such as, I will come back to it later when I will more talk about the workshops. So can we go to next slide, please? And for the next slide, what we really do is after we design this curricula, we train young people. Like young people, for example, a lot of people, they finish school or they at university and they cannot find a job because what they're studying is not really, you know, it's not really adapted to what the market needs right now. So, and then what we do is like we take those students and we teach them how to teach science in a fun way. And then this also is like within our program, we have this job creation motive where we want also young people to be teaching to younger people how to love science. And then, so yeah, can we go to the next? So the next slide, please. And yeah, this is just what I mentioned in English. Can we go to the next one? So yeah, the next slide, please, as well. So yeah, and in this case, after we design the curriculum, we teach young people how to, or university students how to teach science to younger generation. Then we start doing our workshops, which are the hands-on workshops. Can we go to the next slide, please? And the goal of the hands-on workshops is really to help kids start experimenting, you know, making mistakes, you know, understanding, coming, changing, you know, do this, have this kind of, you know, environment where it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay also to come back and kind of, you know, admit that you made a mistake and then trying to make it better. So, and then that's how innovation happens when you in research lab or like you trying to build a tech or something. Every time you learn from your experience, you do this experiment, it doesn't work, you do another one, it doesn't work, and then you start, you know, that's how you eventually you're gonna have this discovery. And can we go to the next slide, please? And us, how we do it is like, we want to change how education is being done in Senegal. So in our case, like I'm not very much an advocate of how school is being done. For example, school will tell you, oh, math, chemistry, physics, this class, biology, and nothing will be related to each other. So, and then you will go these classes one by one, and sometimes not even understanding why you're doing those classes. And then here, what we're trying to change with that is with the curriculum we design, what we want to do is to provide like kind of like an ecosystem to learn for the learners. Like for example, we designed this curriculum that's named Kër Science. Kër Science, Kër meaning house in Wolof, and Science meaning science. And then this curriculum, the goal is for the kids to build a house, to build a futurist house. And then, and to build the house, the kids, they have to go through all the steps to do that, to be able to get to that point. And then all the steps, meaning like, for example, first you have to like, oh, we ask you, the house of your dream will look like. And then you will actually, the kids will actually draw and say, oh, this is the house of my dream, it's what they will look like. It's like, can you build this house with Legos? And then they build it with Legos. And then later we're like, yeah, well, the house you build is this, but understanding in architecture, there are a lot of norms that you have to respect. And then we start teaching them, sorry, just for a second. Yeah, sorry. So it's like the kids, they were just like talking a lot. So yeah, and for the curricula we design, so we make sure like there is these, like the kids go through different steps. For example, when you want to build a house, there's the drawing side, there's the architectural side, there is the norms, there is also the civil engineering part. And when you're done, you have to do the electricity, and then you have to do the decoration. And then in this case also, when we integrate new technology. For example, for the doors and the windows, use 3D printed. And this helped us like integrate a lot of different fields within that program. So, and at the end of the program, the kids, they get to present what they built. So, and then within this program, we teach them beyond the skills, we teach them like teamwork, because if you like 20 students, we cannot build 20 houses. At some point, you have to get together and learn how to collaborate and learn how to work as a team to be like, okay, this is what we're gonna build, and this should reflect the idea of the whole group. And then you teach them also respect in terms of like our programs. Also, we have like young boys, we have young girls, and then they work together to, you know, build it together. And also we mix different age group. So these programs, they start from 6 to 18. And then the teenager will help the younger kids, and you will have this environment where people are helping each other and people are learning together. And then this was very important in us like making the curriculum. And then so with this kind of curriculum, they get to experiment different areas and they get to do different things. So can we go to the next slide, please? So then, and that's how usually we do most of the curriculum. And also when it comes to the house as well, there is things that are related to water, because for example, like a house, there's this water consumption you have to take into account. There's also, when you talk about the house, there is this, like for example, like we talk about sewage system, how it works, and that helped us introduce like the theme of water, and then how water is important also as well in the context of climate change. So can we go to the next slide, please? So yeah, and beside us as well, we collaborate a lot. For example, some of our programs we co-design it. So in this picture, maybe you won't necessarily notice, but one of the student like has a disability. We also do this program where our kids are working with other kids or young people with disability, because the goal will be actually to have a more inclusive like society in how we build our programs. Like people get to collaborate no matter what, whether you a girl, whether you're a guy, where you're from different you know, ethnicity, whether you have a disability or not. What's important, we can come together and we can co-create together. And then within our program as well, can we go to the next slide? We have a lot of professionals, and this just means together we are stronger in French. And can we go to next slide? And for the next slide, really what we're doing is like, when we getting this work done, we integrate also a lot of professionals here in Senegal. Because when it comes to school, like here, for the education, like teachers, they just, I don't know how to call it. It's like when you're a teacher, like the posture is different here, like in elementary school. For example, the teacher comes and is supposed to know everything and reprimand like all the kids. For example, sometimes kids are even afraid to raise their hands because, you know, the environment is not really much for people to participate. And also sometimes a lot of people who should be teaching in local schools as well don't, because just the knowledge they have, it's not very much of value, I would say. For example, in our program, we have a lot of people who do not necessarily, who did not go through regular school. Some people, they didn't even go to school, but they actually have very important knowledge. For example, in our programs, we have people who are farmers. Since we're doing the classes in local languages, they will come and teach. We have people who are artists. We have people who are like fishermen. They all come and they also are part of our programs, and they teach like their subjects, because within the subject they teach, there's a lot of ancestral knowledge and actually not taught in the local school. And then within our programs, we also reviving that indigenous knowledge, because it's very important to conserve it, and it's very important to actually make sure that we pass it to the next generation. So, and then can we go to next slide, please? Yeah. So, and then this is also in terms of collaboration. When COVID-19 happened, you know, it's like everywhere in the world, all of a sudden, like everything stopped in Senegal. Here, the school stops, like everything stops. And then it's actually, what is even sadder is like, in this case, like for a lot of kids in like more developed country, there was e-learning happening, all those kind of stuff. But here in Senegal, like everything stopped. Like kids were not going to school, they did not have means to get educated. So it's kind of crazy. And within that time, you know, and also like even CSB stopped. So we were like, we need to figure out a way so we could still have an impact. And then we decided, okay, at some point, why just not? Because, you know, what we're teaching is like, you could actually learn some skills and you could use those skills directly to impact your community. So we were like, why not like just, you know, start making face shields to help like health centers, because like a lot of doctors, first of all, we don't have many doctors, but for the few doctors we have, or like health human resources, they didn't have a lot of protection, like protective equipments. And we had one 3D printer. We were like, why not use this 3D printer to start making protective equipment for like, and help hospitals. And so we started with this one 3D printer, and at some point we discussed with us, and we had this goal that we're gonna make 20,000 face shields and distribute it in all over Senegal, which is kind of crazy because imagine you have one printer, you need to make 20,000 face shields, and it was kind of crazy because when we calculated, I think it will have taken us with that one printer almost 5 years or something. Even 2025, maybe the pandemic will be gone, we'll be still there doing face shields. And then we realized, okay, well, we needed to raise money to be able to get more printers and to be able also within even train more people to do 3D printing, but also teach people this new technology. So we started fundraising using the internet, like using connection, using like people we knew, and eventually we fundraised all the way to having 28 3D printers. And then we installed what you will call like those production units in different regions in Senegal. And we taught them how to 3D print and how to make face shields and how to like this whole process, which is like, it's almost like you have a factory. This whole process where you will need to go from point A to point Z to be able to have this product that you will deliver at the health center. So, and doing this project, we were able to finally, after 1 year, reach the 20,000 face shields, and we were able to distribute them in 8 regions in Senegal, and then also in 71 like health centers. So we impacted a lot of health centers. So, and this was really, the goal was to save life, and the goal was to do it also collaborating with different organizations that don't even necessarily know how to 3D print, but we can come train you and show you how to do it. And also this part has the advocacy level, because we wanted to show also it was possible to do manufacturing in Africa, but we could do it in a different way where that manufacturing and that training would be put together at the same time. So, and then, yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? And also besides that, this is a project we work in. Each year we organize this big event. So this year we did our 3rd year doing it. And then in 2022, it will be our 4th year. So we organized this festival that's named Ubbil Science. Ubbil means in Wolof open. So open science, which means opening science to different, because the way we want to practice science is just not like we want to be exclusive. For example, well, you don't speak English, you're not part of it. You don't speak French, you're not part of it. You speak the native language, you're not part of it. We want everyone to come together because we feel like everything has something to offer, especially if science is very much integrated within our culture. The people doing the ritual, for example, people doing traditional healing, all these people, they have their place in science. They will not necessarily be called as, scientists, because I mean, in science, we have this denomination where you just need to, go through bachelor, go through master, go through PhD, have a degree in PhD, and then at some point become a professor, and then they would start calling you like scientist or something. But some people, they never been to school, but they have a level of knowledge that could be comparable to someone who did a PhD in a certain field. In what they're doing, they're experts, like in what they're doing it, but that knowledge usually is not very much valued. And then within this event, we want to show that, this is why we're wearing traditional clothes. We could be ourselves, we could be Africans, have this identity, but also be scientists, to, drawn or to go away from that cliche where when you want to talk about scientists, people automatically think of like Einstein, or like with like the messy hair or something, but not necessarily with, for example, a woman wearing traditional clothes in the African context. So this is can we go to the next slide? So this is the event we organize each year. So, and this means that science is everyone's business, it's everyone's job. And then can we go to the next slide, please? And then for the event, we very much do like exhibits, we do panels, we do hands-on workshops. We also do like TV sets. So a lot of people like come to, this event, and usually it's like a big science fair. And then can we go to the next slide? And also like the goal of having this kind of event is like we can advocate for science within our countries, and we can advocate for a different way of doing science. Can we go to the next slide, please? A different way of doing science. We're fighting for a science education that's for everyone. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, and then that science education, our goal is we want to show that development in Africa can be something different. Like a lot of people, when they think about development, they think we need to actually emulate something that's happening in US or Europe or some other places, because that's what they would consider as a developed nation. But it's like, if you think about those places, I lived in Europe, I live in America. It's not like everything is going well in those places, So if you emulate these problems, like for example, if you're emulating to be US in 2022, like it will take you like 20 years to be US in 2022. US will be in 2042, and you will be US in 2022 or even further behind. So which means if you want to develop, you need to find your own path that's very much, that really integrate, that's really shows who you are. And then that's really based on what your value are and who you are as a person. And then this is why for us, we use a lot of local languages in terms of how we promote science, because we advocate for local languages, because we believe local languages, they have their place in the scientific field. We also advocate for the integration of new technology within education, of digital technology as well, new technology. We advocate, we do a lot of digital training through social media and those kind of stuff. We also advocate for women in science, because something that's very much important is like when we talk about science here overall, usually when I go to meetings, international meetings, I'm the only African in those meetings. And it's like all of a sudden I have to represent this whole continent, even if I don't absolutely know what's happening in other places in Africa, like Kenya or something. I'm from Senegal, and I'm even from a region in Senegal. And then usually overall, like this underrepresentation of Black scientists, but something that's even more adamant is like when it comes to women overall, like when you think about like 100 scientists, less than 30 will be women. So which means like we have this problem within like having representation of Black scientists, but we also having a problem with representation of women in science, or Black women scientists when it comes to here as well. So we try to very much advocate for that, to show that women, they have their place in science as well, because diversity is really important when it comes to innovation. And then, so this led us all the way to like talking to the governor, because for the last picture, I was with the president of Senegal, and we advocating for science, and we advocating for like really much doing science in a different way, where you could integrate it into the education. It could be practical, and it could be fun, and it could also be impactful through, for example, the project we did with the facials that we deliver directly to the hospital, which was able to save lives. And then besides CSD, that's like CSD, I also started like this innovation lab, which is UBIL, because something that happened as well is like you can do all this education, which is very good, and it's really interesting. But at some point, if you're able to drive all these people to picking up science, and we actually having this drive, we have impacted over 5,000 students. And all those students, a lot of them, they want to pick science field. Some wants to be architect, some wants to be engineers, a lot of people want to be doctors. And at the beginning, when we had them, they were saying, oh, we want to be teachers, we want to be in the military, etc., because those were the jobs that they were able to see in the environment. But by making them go through this program, they start to change their field, and they know that they could be more, that what they could choose different field. It's just based on what they want to do in their life and what career they want to do. And then now also there's UBIL, so which is, can we go to the next slide, please? And UBIL is an innovation lab, because everywhere where we're doing this program as well, we have CSD, and we have even other startups, which I did not talk about here, that are within this innovation lab. The goal is also, we have all these people that we train, but eventually the people we training, something that happens here as well in Africa, it's like we have a lot of young people, and the market, the job market cannot absorb all these young people coming in and trying to get a job. So we also, entrepreneurship is also a way to kind of champion what's happening and to find a solution where we could build actually companies that we could help people build companies, but we could also build companies that, you know, that would provide more jobs to this coming young people. So this is why there's this innovation lab also that we set up, that is UBIL, and then so far we're incubating like different startups, whether it's like in education, it's also in Internet of Things. So basically in like newer technology. And also something I have not mentioned is like doing this whole work in Senegal had really opened doors to me, because like when I do this kind of work, like the press is involved, the government is involved. So, and at some point, like people start, well, you know, these people, they're doing great job, etc. And then that's how I ended up being at the virtual university. Because when I decided to leave US and then come back to Senegal, I had no, like, I did not have a job offer, no, I did not have anything on the table. So it's actually very risky to do that, because it's not, my life wasn't going well in the US. I could have stayed there, like work in the lab, and I would be very much, my life would be stable. I could have a very good job. So, but I decided to come back. And I decided to come back and struggle through building this organization, because I think it was important. And it was important to do that because when it comes to, for example, the future, here we're talking about robotics, we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're talking about biotech. And in those fields, we're not present. We like, for example, when COVID happened, most of African nations, they were waiting for someone to invent a vaccine somewhere. And then at some point they will use it. And then usually that's kind of very dangerous. And this pandemic, COVID-19, is showing us how dangerous it is. And I think with COVID, we were even lucky because it's not as, it could have been worse. The virus could have been worse. It could have had, the lethality could have been more important. But in this case, it's dangerous. And it is dangerous because if we don't gear students towards those jobs, eventually, if we have a society where we have robots that are run with AI, for me, it's like you will have a second sort of colonization in Africa, which be some sort of neo-colonization, where you will get these robots or something, you will get all this technological development that will come here, and then like you won't be able to keep up because like this will be the time you had to build all these skills, you did not do it. And eventually it's like the Industrial Revolution, you will be behind again. So we're fighting against that because we want to be part of the global economy as well. We want to be part of people like making decisions. We want to be part of the people that are leveraging knowledge to create and build new technologies. And all this work, what I'll say, it helped me get noticed for like the virtual university. And in this case, you know, that's what I was mentioning in that article in Nature. Like we in Africa, is like many countries, we are like in startup nations. So the experience I learned building this organization and building an innovation lab, it's an experience that the university learned as well. Because in this case, the job I was given is like, okay, well, and that's why it's like kind of closing the arc, because I mentioned that I'm a molecular biologist, but for what I talk about till now, I did not talk about molecular biology, because when I came back, I just did not have a place where I could do that molecular biology because we were just not there yet. And now within the virtual university, I get to build a program from scratch where we're building this bachelor in molecular genetics and bioinformatics, and also this master degree. And then so the goal will be, eventually I got back into my field, and the goal would be to train students toward this kind of jobs, and then also make sure, like for example, build a lab, like a research lab that goes along, and a practical lab where students could actually like do their practical experience, because like they could actually, you know, when for example another pandemic comes, when another problem comes, we'll be able to have like people here who necessarily have the skills and who can actually, you know, have the facilities to be able to do something about it. So, and then this is what I wanted to present here, like first, because for me, that's why this presentation was like about like build what I love. But because the advice I could really give about career is, for me, I just, like, I always wanted to do something where I felt like this was like something I wanted to do. When it comes to like research in STEM, or when it comes to education in STEM, when it comes to research, when it comes to like what I built the career I wanted. I wanted to have a multidisciplinary career. I wanted not to be a molecular biologist that's just like working on one gene her whole life or something. And I wanted to have an impact back for where I'm from. So I decided I was gonna do things that I felt like was the real me. And I was able, luckily, to, you know, build something. We're still in the process of building it, build something that reflects who I am as a person, and reflects also my community, and reflects where we wanna be like in the next coming years. So thank you so much for listening. And yeah, I'm very grateful for the invitation.
Khady, thank you very much. Actually, your presentation is really inspiring, and actually you do innovation in education for any country, not only for Senegal. I think that Brazil, if someone had you as an entrepreneur in education in Brazil, it would be a great opportunity for our the education of our young people. So I'm really impressed, not because you are working in Senegal, because you are brilliant in the area. You are using actually the tools that Paulo Freire, our great educator, he knows for educating people, young people. So thank you very much. We have people that at Washington, our researcher, had written, thank you for this inspiring conference. this way of looking at your own country is a lesson for any young scientist now entering our postgraduate graduation programs. I'm sorry, courses. I remember a lot of the book, O Dilemma in America, the Dilemma of Latin America, from Darcy Ribeiro, one of our more brilliant thinkers. So I think that it is an example, a model that we have to follow, not only for postgraduate programs, but also for much more important for people in the lower age. So anybody, congratulations, Paulo Freire and Anísio Teixeira together, and all of people that have done, that tried to done this in Brazil, and we still beginning this type of education for all the people, for all the young people. We have in some schools, like private schools, but not only in the public schools. That would be much more important. Claudia?
Thank you very much, Kate, for this inspiring conference. It's really, really impressive. I would like to know, how do you get the investment to trying to do everything that you did? I think that it was really,
Kylie,
hard,
it's silent.
Yeah.
You're not
sorry,
hearing.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying that it's a very good question, because that is like, the investment is the hard part. But you know, something that did not stop me, because, and I advise that to a lot of young entrepreneurs, it's like people think like you need to have the money first to start something, which is not the case. Like the money will come later, because eventually when you start something, you will realize that even if you had a lot of money first, you were not mature, that you will not know how to spend that money. So, and then when it comes to the financial aspect of what we're doing, it's like, first it was money that was coming from our own pocket. It's like people were like contributing money, like friends, like family, etc. That's how we started doing the workshops. And then also a lot of people who were working in these programs were volunteers. Even now we have a lot of volunteers, like people who are not getting paid to run this program. But then later, as we kind of show that we actually doing good job, we started to have like organization. For example, we had a grant from the Royal Academy of Engineering from the UK. We had a grant from Open Society when they found about our work with facials. So we're starting to get noticed by international organizations who are mainly providing grants for us to be able to start doing the work. So, and then, you know, local organization, when we were doing the facials, we got a help from a local bank, like someone was a like international soccer player. So like a lot of people are contributing into like this venture. And then mainly it's like people, it's some organization. And then it's not like financially as well, we're doing super great, but we actually be able to pilot our program with few resources, and now we're getting noticed, and hopefully, you know, it will keep growing. So yeah, thank you.
So congratulations again for your wish and everything that you got. Really, thank you very much for your inspiring conference.
Marilda, she wrote, we know that it's a matter of opportunity of expanding possibilities education for all. Did you have any, you have just talked about that we began with the people that you were enthusiastic as you to begin this very, very hard job. But how does it begin actually?
Well, how it began? You know, one day it began because, you know, as I mentioned before, like this Ebola outbreaks, it really scared me. And then I was like, well, now it's time to do something. It's time to do something. I don't know what you're going to do, but it's time to do something. So, and then at some point I saw, it was like, I think it was with the Clinton Global Initiative. There was like this stuff that they call CGIU, where you could be a commitment maker. I was like, well, I was going to apply to this. And then applying to that stuff, I needed actually to start framing what was in my head, like how I was going to do it, to start writing the project. And then after I was done with the application, I already had a project. So when I came in home, I went to actually local schools and I talked to school directors and I was like, well, we want to do this. We want to teach science to kids. And what do you think about it? And then they gave us some advice and we were like, can we do it here? And at some point at the beginning, since we were just starting, we did not have the approval. Well, we still do not have it, of the ministry in charge of education. So at some point, those local schools, they backed out. They backed down, and we were like, since they're afraid to do it, let's just go and do it in some kind of like centers. Like, for example, it's a local library here. We were just like, let's start to the local library. We went to that library and then we start talking to people. Oh, we have this idea where we want to teach science, and science is important because this and that and that. Because in Africa, or in Senegal in particular, a lot of people know why we cannot be developed yet. It's like the education system is not very much working, and people realize that. And then, so it was not very hard to convince people, be like, okay, we can do this together. And then people decided to do it. And then I used also my network back in France because I was doing that education there. We started designing programs. And then since I was in US, I was trading in WhatsApp at first. So that's how really we started. And then we trained in WhatsApp, we did our workshop, then the second workshop. It's just like, it was done bit by bit, and it took some time because what I'm talking about here is this is 2015. So it took all the way from like now 2022 to be able to like reach this stage. So also it's like you have to be very patient as well. So when it comes to like getting where you want to go. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Marilda, do you have any question?
Just to know that there is
just congratulate about the talk, and I know exactly what she said, because when I went to Africa, in Benin, I come back to Brazil, and I thought I need to do something with people from Africa, and this is very strong. In my way, it was very, very, very strong to do this. He brought some students from Nigeria and from Benin. It was very, very, very nice. We have people that come back already and doing a lot of things there. And it's very nice learning with you today, because you have a wonderful work, and I'm very proud of this. Congratulations.
Fantastic. We have a question of a student, Alan Duarte. How can we surpass this reality of scientific knowledge, learning the new researchers towards more and more specific skills for one specific area, one specific gene or disease, and the need for jobs for young students who are graduating master's or PhD degrees, who can find a job opportunity or resources to start on entrepreneurs. So it's exactly what you can learn, tell us how to do that.
How to do what? Sorry, how to?
He asking how to do that in other countries where we begin learning the specific things, as you told, one gene, one disease, and then transfer this opportunity that we had learned during your PhD, translate this for this open it's open education, and it's difficult. Mostly in Brazil, that we don't have jobs for the young people that are beginning to do, finishing their PhD or their masters.
Oh, so you guys have similar problems as well.
But now we have with this crazy president.
That's your president is kind of crazy a bit.
Yeah,
so
that's really.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, what I like though, you know, that's why usually for me it was important when I was actually studying. For me, what's important not necessarily is, it's not degrees. Now more I know it, it's like the skills you build towards getting into that degree. And for me, basically I wanted to do many things. I was always interested in different things. Like, and I felt like, you know, obviously with molecular biology, they're trying to make you focus on, like, have this kind of tunnel vision where you don't see everything happening on your background. But also something that's important also when you do a PhD above, it's not because you did a PhD, sorry, in a specific area that you will necessarily work in that specific area. Because PhD also, I think something it teaches you is how to be, at least my experience is how to be independent, how to think critically, and how also to get from this project where you have this project who may be just an idea to at some point, finally, you create knowledge out of it and you publish it. And I think those skills are very much needed. Those are very similar to a skill that an entrepreneur will have. Because an entrepreneur, when you're in that environment, you have to basically start into this area where you get from this stuff, this company you want to build, or this idea you want to go from point A to point Z. And then, so that's why I'm saying, even if they trying to make you laser focus on this one thing, if you use actually not only this scientific knowledge, but this critical knowledge in terms of critical thinking, how to solve problems, you could apply that in different fields. And then for me, that's how we apply that in innovating when it comes to education. So we innovated how we do education in here. And we did that by using, you know, critical knowledge that I learned doing PhD in terms of, well, this is the problem, it's not working, these are the solutions, let's test this, is it working, let's change, is it not working, is it working, that's good, it's not working, let's change. So that's why it's always good to be resourceful, to keep learning and to figure out like ways where you could go and solve a problem. For me, I'm very much focused on problem solving. I see a problem in this specific field, I try to go will be my take on that.
Okay. Khady, Mr. Maya, do you want to make a question? Mita?
No, I just want to congratulate Khady. It was really a very inspiring presentation. And the question that I had, if she has done evaluation of egress of the individuals that are involved in the project, what's happening at the very end of them? If they really get motivated, if they are getting job opportunity. I know that, for example, in the USA, when they stimulate the biomedical research, this was a very nice paper published in PNAS, showed that still in the USA, a lot of individuals that got opportunity to do PhD, in the very end, they did not got job. And sometimes they became frustrated about that. I just would like to hear from her some comment about evaluation and what's going on with the individuals that are involved in the different initiatives.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So when it comes to evaluation, So right now, what I can say, we started very young. Like for the kids we have, for our educational program, we started at 2. So a lot of those kids, they still within the education system. They're not out yet. But what we can see from the evaluation is like they starting to change the discipline in which they want to go to. So they, instead of at the beginning having more traditional job, now they more focus on doing some sort of, want to do in the future some sort of engineering jobs and those kind of stuff. And that when it comes to like some of the young people that we took, like starting from 18, we did not take very many when it comes to like this teaching. But for the people we took, like some of them, for example, we have some students who are now studying, like getting into those programs and studying something related to biology, because like most of all, what they mentioned is like, because they went through this program, they're able to kind of choose like a career which they will think will be more, for example, it will be based on newer technology instead of using like traditional career where you will not necessarily find a job at the end. And for some of those students, through the innovation lab as well, what we create is like through the innovation lab, since we have companies in there, we integrating them within the companies. So a lot of students right now, some of them are still university students, they're working as an intern within those companies. So which means it's like we're trying to build an ecosystem, but bit by bit, and we're trying to pilot it to see whether it works. Because if we just come and say, oh, we want to do STEAM education, let's make all these million kids choose science, at the end, they're not going to find a job. So which means that if it has to be transformational, you need to gear them towards science, but at the end, you need to provide the opportunities to be, for them to be able to integrate a company, or even them to be able eventually to study abroad. We're thinking about that as well, because in Senegal, you don't offer. In my case, I'm lucky enough that I can build this new program related to molecular genetics. But for some people who want to do like some advanced thing related to some other area, maybe that program doesn't exist here. So a way of having more funding and providing scholarship for people to go abroad and study like what I did, we also exploring that. So that's why it's like when we explain this program to the government or something, they're like, what you have is not a project, it's some sort of developmental, it's an ecosystem you're trying to build, which is like, it's complicated, but eventually bit by bit, we gearing them, we integrating them, we evaluating. And for the people we have working with us, they are very, what I can say, if you compare them to other students or other workers who are from the traditional Senegalese system, it's absolutely not the same. So they're more skillful, they can integrate, like they could integrate other companies better, even if, but so far we want to keep them because I mean, they do amazing job, and they also get to work in different projects as well, which is kind of very cool. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope I answered.
Thank you very much.
Question.
Very nice
Khady.
presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Luis Kiataki asked outstanding experiences with so many similarities with Brazil, that's for sure. And he has a question. How important is the participation on the government, the Ministry of Education, and how to touch them to promote the needed changes?
Say, wow, that's
difficult.
This question is, yeah, that's difficult, but that's very relevant question. So the Ministry of Education, so far, we took the path for build it and they will come, because at the beginning we tried to build it with them, but they did not care. So we just like, okay, let's not worry about the Ministry of Education and let's just keep working. Eventually they will absolutely have to come, because like, for example, the kids we were training, like it's like 2 months from now, they went to a TV station here in Senegal, and the kids, they performed very good. They were there explaining like in the local language, they explaining very complicated science, like science concept to like some people who went through the traditional system. And then a lot of people were commenting, like the government needs to do something about that. The education here is bad. Look at these kids. I did not know like something like this existed in Senegal. This is the way to do it. So, and then it became viral. So it became viral. So which means now the government sees. So eventually, if we keep growing and growing and growing, they will have to act. So that's what I will advise. Here, the government, especially in these places, they're like, if you wait for them, you're not going to do anything. So, but if you ignore them, like keep doing what you can do, eventually, but also what we do also, not the Ministry of Education, we work, because in Senegal, we have different Ministry of Education, which is in charge of primary until high school education. We have a ministry that that's in charge of higher education and innovation. And then for the ministry in charge of the younger kids, we don't have, it's not working really well. But for the higher education one, they started to notice us. They come to our events, they listen to what we have to say. And then, so we're starting to bridge this gap with them, which means eventually we're gonna get there. But our goal really, our end goal will be like the program, we're doing it on the side. And then mainly people commenting, that's what they were saying. Imagine these people, they did this from scratch with no help. We have to take their model of education and integrate it into the public education. We're not even now advocating for ourselves, it's the public that's advocating for us. And I think that's very important to get to that point eventually. So yeah.
How many years you were able from the beginning to touch these people? How many years you spent in this
20
this process?
6 almost 7 years. So it took
oh my God.
It took
You're really fantastic.
Yeah, it took time. But yeah.
Washington, he's asking me, Washington Santos, do you think that your program of teaching that can in some way decrease the continuous dependence that middle and low income countries like ours developing in relation to high income countries?
Yeah, definitely. That's the goal, really. Yeah, definitely.
That's the idea, almost.
Yeah, that's the idea, because, and we want to show it with specific examples. That's why that facial project was very important, because usually when it comes to protection equipment, what will have happened is they will have ordered those equipment in China or in some other places using money that was funded by the World Bank or something. So, and in this case, you showing that using money that's funded locally, like people contributing, you could actually build a manufacturing base where you could build those facials and you could directly deliver it to the hospitals. So with concrete examples, we're showing the government that these could be done locally, because eventually development, it has to come from within. It needs to come from the people and go upside. It cannot be a top-down approach. So, and then, because if it's a top-down approach, at some point you will create elitism. Like, it's like what will happen in South Africa. It's like just a small part of the population will detain the economy, and then everyone else, well, I'm sorry for you guys. I'm sorry for you for being poor. So, and then that is not the way things are supposed to go. It has to be, everyone should be able to live a decent life, and everyone should be able to study. Everyone should be able to go at the hospital and have a good doctor that takes care of them. And this is what we're showing, that we could do that by leveraging local resources and by leveraging the local language, and also by being open internationally. It's not like we want to be closed down and say we can do everything by ourselves, because for most of our programs, sometimes they funded, like some programs are funded by international organizations. Like when we say we have to do education in Wolof, like it's not like we mean let's not study in Wolof. Me advocating for it. I speak English, I speak French. It doesn't mean like I'm just like, let's speak Wolof, let's not speak another language, let's be closed down. But what we're saying is like, before being opened up, you have to be deeply rooted inside your culture, You have to know who you are. You have to know where you want to go. And then after that, you can be like, hey guys, you can come and contribute it because this is my project and this is how you can help me. And this is how we can get from, being like a country that has not a lot of means to a country where people can be like, oh, well, my life is nice. I can eat when I want, I can go to school, I can go to a hospital, and I'm fine with that. That's that's the end goal. So definitely, yeah, we want to be less dependent. And that's what we're trying to show.
Khady, we have the last question here. Sorry, you can stay forever discussing with you. That would be fantastic for us. What is the impact of COVID-19 in your education process? People had the remote internet access to keep following the classes. How does you deal? Yeah. How did you deal with that?
Well, that's a good question. So when it comes to the pandemic, like really, like internet access, it's a problem here. And also before, when we started, we always had like a project to build an e-learning, like since 2015. But like every time we were trying to do things step by step, build the program, pilot the program, and then eventually go to the e-learning. And e-learning also, you need a set of skills you need to do in terms of the digital infrastructure, which you need to maintain when you want to build the e-learning as well. And then you also need to teach people how to use that tool. So, and that necessarily is not something very much easy in here. So our e-learning project didn't go as well. So we kind of slow it down. But when the pandemic came, we were like, okay, we should have done this earlier. And then what happened really is when COVID came in, we had to stop our programs. So we did this, we stopped our programs and we were like, let's see how we can contribute to this pandemic. So in terms of our programs, we started to build more because we were more focused in that age. We took like this, I think 8-month break because school was closed and it was forbidden to like, gather people, which is actually super normal. And then we closed down our program, like related to teaching kids. But we started building like internet resources that we were using social media to spread. And then in that case, we built this like, how do you call that? This, we were teaching about, since we haven't designed program about it yet, but during COVID, we designed programs about like virus, what is a virus, like how you get COVID, to teach about a lot of stuff about COVID. So to put it out there, so at least we keep continuing doing our program and impacting people. And also in this case, focusing more on the large public. And in this case, we did this video that also became viral when it comes to like, COVID-19, how it works, etc. And then afterwards, that's how we decided, okay, we're gonna get into these face shields. So we will close certain aspect of our program, but these will continue towards like, we won't be able to get at this workshop, but we could actually set up production unit where there will not be a lot of people, one, two people maximum, and then they could actually keep having an impact on the community. So that's how we handle like COVID until it was okay to open up, schools again. So we started doing workshop with masks and that kind of thing. But so far, what we're working on right now is we're working on building our e-learning platform and using all the materials which we designed before and make courses with that. So it could be used from like different places. So yeah, if I had to answer about COVID, yeah, it's like
yeah, very, very nice. Khady, just to finish, I would like to, all of us would like to congratulate your work and just to talk directly for the students here. In your last article that we found in Nature, about the voices in Africa, and your article, it's about your experience. You talked about the idea to go back to Africa because you saw the movie, the Black Panther. So I think that it's amazing, and it's a fantastic movie, and I would like you to talk about, to touch the young people that are here in the audience.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So, when I started CSD when I was doing PhD. And then by that time, I was networking a lot, going to a lot of international conferences, and I was talking about CSD a lot, like how we should change education, how development could be rooted inside the culture, how we should not be US, but we could keep our own culture and be our own people and still be able to be a nation that's developed. And a lot of questions people were asking me, well, you cannot be developed with your native language because it's not spoken by a lot of people. And then people would just I think people were not understanding necessarily the vision of what I was talking about. And then, by the time I finished PhD in the US, I wanted to come back right after. But at some point also, I got a little scared because, it took so much sacrifice to be abroad all those years and study and then get all the way to PhD. It's like, I got out parentheses. You see, every time you see people taking the boat, trying to go to those places in Europe or something because they want to find a better place. But in your case, you were able to go in those places, you were able to study in good university, you were able to get a good degree so you can build a life there with no problem. So at some point it's like, are you crazy? So it's like sometimes in my life, I felt like I was self-sabotaging, really. Like I did all this stuff, I made all this sacrifice, and now it's like, you're gonna go back to Senegal, you a PhD and you'll be teaching kids science. Are you serious? Like in my head. So are you serious where you could be here running a lab or trying to be a professor in the US? So I spent this whole year where I could not make myself apply to something because usually when you finish PhD with my professor, the goal, even his former students, it was like that. And my friends, it's like after you're done with that PhD, you have to apply to Ivy Leagues. Either you go to Harvard, you go to Columbia, you go to Berkeley, or you go to Cornell. That's the next step that's the next step for you. But then you see your friends doing that and you hear I want to go back. I don't even have a job. I don't have anything. I want to go back. And then I was hesitating a lot. At some point, I was hesitating a lot. And one day I was like, okay, it was in March or something. I was like, well, I'm just waiting for a sign or something. Maybe if I see a sign or something, I'll decide I'm gonna come. So it didn't make sense really. And then this movie came out, Black Panther. I know, I was like, oh, it's the first movie about a superhero that's Black. Well, maybe it's fun because there's this whole hype in it. And then I was like, I went to the theater and I sat down. And the beginning song is a Senegalese guy who's singing. And the song he's singing, it's a song we sing here about our ancestors. So all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of New York City and I'm at the theater and people singing your ancestors. I was like, what's happening? It was so it impacted me so much in a way. And then there was a lot of Senegalese reference, Senegalese music. And it was oh, the movie is wonderful for me. And then what I saw is I was like, this is what I'm talking about. So that's why it's cinema is very important in terms of storytelling, because when you go to those places, you're talking about this vision, but people, they just don't get you. They just don't get you because they oh, well, they want to be close now, etc. But with Black Panther, you see, for example, the nation of Wakanda, you see how they develop and how they different from places that would look like Europe or something. and how they would still speak their local languages, but they actually speak English as a way to open up to the world, and how technologically they so developed because they kept their roots and they kept like their values. And that is what I've been talking about since the beginning. And what I like a lot about the Black Panther is like at the end, people will notice that at the end, it's like they open a STEM center in the US, in Oakland, to teach kids science, to teach kids science, which was, I'm like, okay, I'm going back. I was like, okay, I'm going back. So then I was like, if I was looking for a sign, if this is not a sign, I don't know what would be a sign. So then like a month from now, one day I just woke up, I bought my ticket and I came back and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. So that's like the Black Panther story. So it was like, I love that movie. I think it's amazing. So I will.
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Khady. And
no
I think that the last thing is if you can put your email address or your contact for people calling you. Marilda, she wants to discuss with you, and maybe you can put your cell phone and by WhatsApp. It's easier always.
Yeah,
I have your Twitter, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, so this is right. Yeah, it's like this. So I put my email and my WhatsApp. Yeah, I think that's yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
That's so fantastic, and I think that it's really an opportunity for us to hear you.
Yeah,
thank you very
so much for inviting me. Yeah, that was nice.
Claudia,
I'm always happy to share.
She's leading the presentation. Ciao.
Thank you, Khady.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.